Yeah. Well, anyways, everybody, welcome. Thank you guys for joining me on my third kind of live stream test. Can everybody hear me okay? Oh, we got everyone. Great kid going to bed soon, but he's supporting. Thank you, Edwin. I'm actually sharpening your knife today. So yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of knife sharpening. I got a couple stainless steel knives. One of them I'm giving to a friend, Edwin. This is the Misa and 8-inch chef's knife. It's a stainless steel knife. And then I have the Korin orange handle inox petty that I've had for years that they don't make anymore. But both of them kind of needed some work, so we're gonna go. Let's see what we got. Edwin in the chat. Nice, nice, nice. And yeah, let's just get started then. So I'm gonna shift my camera over here. Do. So like I said, in the future, I am going to have a second camera and I'm going to do some different compression kind of testing. But for now, we're just kind of doing this one camera setup, which I think works all right. So I'm going to basically do a 2-stone process. I'm going to do this rough stone. Well, it's not really rough. It's kind of more like a 1-2000 grit. And then this one, which is more of a 4 to 6,000 grit. I'm not exactly sure. I got these years ago on a trip to Japan. So, you know, but they are kind of like in that range, but I'm not exactly sure the exact number. But oh, we got Edwin and Michael chatting. Nice. But yeah, basically, I'm just gonna put these in a holder. This one's been soaking. I don't need to soak the higher grit stone because it actually might even crack. You only really need to soak kind of like 4,000 and below, but this is kind of right on the edge, so I'm not quite sure. Got a wet t-shirt underneath me to help stabilize the rig a little bit as I go. So this is called a fixing stone, but basically you run this up and down each stone right before you start, and it basically ensures that the whole plane is flat. You don't want these little kind of micro variations, which might kind of create inconsistencies in your blade as you're sharpening. You'll see here that this is a little bit of a slurry that's starting to build up here. We actually want all of this to kind of stay on top of the stone. This is actually what's going to sharpen our blade. It's not actually so much the stone itself, but it is that slurry that sits on top of the stone that's going to do most of the sharpening. So I'm going to use, this is a little slurry stone. This basically kind of helps us get this whole thing started. You can see we're nice little slurry build up here. And I'm going to actually start with the meson. We're going to want to keep this nice and wet as we go. Stainless steel is a little bit more difficult to sharpen than carbon steel because it's a bit harder, but I guess actually I'll just explain kind of as I go. But yeah, basically stainless steel is different than carbon steel in that it has chromium added to it. And what that does is it, more than anything, kind of makes it a lot more like weather resistant and erosion resistant. It doesn't really, which translates to it doesn't rust as easily as a carbon steel knife. Carbon steel has a little bit superior edge retention. There are some other things that kind of go into it, and it is known to sometimes be able to get a little bit more razor sharp. But it's a lot more erosion, susceptible to erosion. So what I'm kind of doing now is I am pushing down firmly with my fingers as I'm going up and kind of releasing as I'm coming back. I'm trying to maintain about a 15 to 20 degree angle. While maintaining an angle, it's somewhere between there. Yes, it is, Edwin. Yes, it is. But yeah, the whole thing, it's a little bit kind of tricky, the whole like sharpness versus edge retention thing. Whereas like stainless steel knives tend to not be as sharp as carbon steel knives, but there are examples of stainless steel knives that can be not as hard as carbon steel knives, but there are examples like this Korin inox petty that we're going to be sharpening afterwards that can be, it's super hard and super resistant. So we're looking, oh yeah, there we go. We already have a burr kind of forming there. See how we're doing on our focus. Yeah, we're pretty focused. Not bad. And so I'm going to, we're already kind of making pretty good time on this. I'm going to do, instead of pulling back like you would normally see people, I'm going to do an inverted technique, which is where for the other side, I just switch hands. Shout out to Jason at Astoria Cutlery, who put me onto this. It's a little bit tricky, but I actually kind of find it's a lot easier to maintain an angle. And we're kind of working our two fingers up and down the blade, working that transition. Let's see what we got. Oh, we already have a burr on the opposite side. All right, so now we've kind of like had our two sides of the burr. So now we're going to kind of do a lesser amount of strokes on each side to kind of just even it out before we move to our higher grit stone. All right, switch again. Now, I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of people with opinions on kind of how I'm doing this, and you should have opinions. I'm definitely an amateur knife sharpener. I've been sharpening for a number of years on and off. I kind of did take a little bit of a break from cooking for a period, but you know, there's a lot of different ways to do sharpening. There's a lot of different theories. I think like the biggest thing is that you want to maintain an angle and you want to do something that you feel comfortable with. It's all kind of relative. All right, I think we're about evened out there. I got a little bit more there. And a little bit more burr on that side too. What do we got here? Checking the chat. See you, Edwin. Scott and I will hold down the fort. Well, I see Michael talking. I can also see Michael in my head looking over at Scott on the couch right now, being like, see, I told you. Just kidding. I love you both. So Scott, there's the other chap talking, Ira Saw Talks. He was over at my house earlier today. We're about done with that. We're going to move over to our finer stone. He was over sharpening his Wusthof Classic, which is a big boy of a knife. A little bit difficult to use. It's also like a very thick knife. Like the actual edge is very thick. I love the Wusthof Classics, but it is definitely a completely different style, whereas these are much more, you know, this is a Japanese style. This is as well. I mean, they're Western Japanese styles, but kind of a completely different thing. Where's that slurry stone? Aha. There's a slurry stone. Let's get our fixing stone out real quick. So the big thing when we're moving to our finishing stone is we don't need to go nearly as hard. We've kind of already built our edge. We don't want to break it. So really what we're looking to is just kind of clean it up, make it a little bit sharper. Let's get some of this old stuff off of here. And let's give it a go. All right, yeah, that's already feeling pretty good. And it does feel completely different, this stone. Funny, like when you get into like the super low grits, you could really feel it taking off metal. Whereas this really feels almost like you're kind of ice skating. I'm kind of loosely counting. Again, like the deal is that we're not really looking for necessarily a burr at this point as much as we are kind of just like cleaning up the work that we've done, making it better. all in all, it doesn't actually take that long to work through these things. The one thing I really like about carbon steel is that it's very quick. You can take off metal very easily. The stainless steel, you do have to work a little bit more for it, but still, 10 minutes a knife, something like that. And the thing about stainless steel too is like you really don't have to do it super often. I mean, even if you're cooking a lot, probably like once every month, or there's some people that say like, do it, oh, careful, do it like every quarter. But I don't think that that's quite enough. All right, so we're kind of done it. So what we're going to do now is just some kind of like finishing strokes. We're going to kind of more or less use the whole length of the blade. Some people throughout all of the sharpening, they kind of do the whole length of the blade. You'll see them kind of just going like this. You can do that too. I find it to be a little less control. So I like to kind of save that type of motion for the very end of the finishing. All right. I think we're looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this over here and I'm going to get our strop, which is essentially just a piece of leather, a very hard piece of leather. And what we're going to do is slide our knife on here. We're going to kind of like bend into it a little bit almost. This isn't like a honing steel. What this actually does is it helps kind of just remove any little bits of metal that are kind of clinging onto the edge. It's kind of like what you would see like a barber doing at a barber shop. So it's almost like honing, but not quite. Because of that, and because it's so soft, you could kind of almost like curl the edge into it. I think that's pretty good. I don't have the most awesome paper for the paper test, but I do have some paper. So we're going to pull back out here and go back to autofocus. Bring ourselves around. Let's see. So we do have some paper, but yeah. Oh. Now, you normally want kind of like a magazine paper, which is like a little bit lighter, which kind of is a little more difficult to hit. But you can tell, like, I'm looking at all the parts of the blade. Like, it's pretty good. What I got? Still looks cool. It does. Cutting paper, man. You can actually see if you look kind of down. I don't know how much the camera. Let's see if the camera could kind of pick this up. But I will focus. Yeah, you can kind of see like there's this like little edge that kind of runs all the way on the top. And when you're looking, you're kind of looking for just like a consistency in the width of that line as it runs from top to bottom. And it's looking pretty freaking consistent. Yeah, pretty good. Do one more piece of paper just for fun. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, anyways, I'm satisfied. I know Edwin will be. Edwin, I will bring this into work this week. Use my little corn sleeve for it. And I will clean that up a little bit more later. All right, so next up we have the Corin Special Inox Orange Handle Petty. I really liked this series. Inox is a notably pain in the ass hard steel. It's a high carbon, not high carbon. It's a stainless steel, but it's very hard. And part of what that is with the chromium is the chromium actually creates these little clusters that get super, super hard, and they're kind of patterned around the steel. And that's part of why, not necessarily, I'm going to reposition the camera again. It's not necessarily means that the edge is that strong, but like there are these little clusters in themselves that just make sharpening that much more difficult. But a knife like this is just very, I don't remember what it was, but I remember like the inox steel in particular, they boast the Rockwell hardness and this and that. They don't make this knife anymore. They do have more house brand knives that are great. Pricing is very, very fair for what you're getting. Very high performance, but they're not inox, I don't believe, the new blue handle ones. Great knives. but just in case. This knife, I don't use it in like my videos very much, but it is kind of like a standard in our house where it's this is kind of like the knife that'll be hanging out on the cutting board the most, kind of waiting to get used. It's just kind of generally like great for a lot of tasks. Can you do it closer to the mic? Oh, the actual sharpening? You know, I can. Here, let me do. I'm going to plug in this other microphone that I was keeping off. Probably just kicked in right there. Let me get this mic nice and close. I was keeping it to just the one mic. Paper test next to the mic. Ah, okay. Wait, tell me how this. Tell me if this sounds any different. I have this other mic plugged in now. It makes my voice sound a little less good because the mics are interfering, but it might make the sharpening sound really cool. So yeah, let's give this a shot. We're all like focused up. Yes, we are. Here we go. And this already just feels so much different than the other knife. Yeah. Let me know if on a knife sharpening level, if this sounds better than it did before for the other knife. Than it did before for the other knife. Chat, where you at? I'm just kidding. So when you get to this kind of point where you're getting towards the tip, does it sound better with this mic? It kind of changed up the situation between these two knives. Does when you're getting to this point where it kind of like moves from here to here, you do want to, instead of like changing the angle, you really just kind of want to raise your elbow, and that kind of changes the attack, the approach of it. Jason over at Astoria Cutlery kind of put it that way, and I thought it made a lot of sense. This one, we're going a little bit steeper in angle. We're definitely going more for like a straight 15 on this one, just because it is such a hard steel. It's a Japanese style. It's a thin blade. It's going to be able to hold the edge. I think we already have a burr throughout. So yeah, a little more difficult than a carbon steel knife to sharpen, but still like very, very manageable. All right, let's get the other side. And again, I mentioned it right when the stream started, but I think in the next couple of weeks, I'm trying to do one of these a week, but you're going to see the addition of a second camera. Probably what it'll be is there'll be a wide shot that stays on me in some type of cutaway, or even like a picture-in-picture treatment with a second camera that's more of this kind of close-up angle. I also think it's going to be a little bit more of a direct angle. So whereas this is like very over my shoulder, it'll probably be a little bit more of like a straight side angle. So I kind of already know. And this is a 50-50 grind as well. You can kind of change that if you wanted to do like some of these knives. Like this knife could definitely have more of like a 70-30 grind, which just kind of allows you to get a little bit more accurate cuts, kind of like getting more on, kind of hinting at that single bevel kind of idea. But we're not going to do that. But the way to really do that is just spend twice as long on one side as the other, kind of essentially is like the base idea. I think we're pretty much done with this stone. Just really checking to make sure there's no egregious burr action going on. And these last kind of like finishing swipes that I'm doing is really like I'm pushing down a lot lighter than I have been on the initial approach. You know, don't be afraid to push down. It's like I don't know, it's like kind of working with a dull knife versus a sharp knife. It's better to go for it and have control rather than actually being hesitant and not really controlling it enough actually kind of makes it a more dangerous situation. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. Doobie-doo. All right, our last stone of the evening. I'm just going to give this a bit of that flattening treatment. Let me just make sure that this is actually a little slurry. Yeah, let me know in chat or in the comments how audio is doing and stuff. I'm kind of testing a few microphone situations. We kind of changed it up halfway through this recording, but I think we're getting there. All right, second pass, the Corin inox. Well, Corin does not sponsor me. They are a great family-owned knife shop in New York City that's operated for like 30 or 40 years. They've got a great relationship with Suisun knife makers, with Masamoto, and a couple other brands. They make their own knives as well, and partner with other companies to make their own knives. But highly recommended. They ship around the country. They do sharpening services, all that stuff. It's just one of those places where it's like, you know, you're getting that kind of baseline of quality. They've been in business for a long time. They are kind of like one of those small privately owned staples. It's hard getting Japanese knives in the US from like an actual small business versus like, you know, going online through a wholesaler or something like that and just kind of trusting that it's going to be what you're looking for. You know, you've got these places like in New Orleans, and there's a couple other bigger cities that have some pretty great knife shops where you can get some really great carbon steel knives. But if you're not in one of those places, it's kind of tough. But they do ship. And I do think also, like, you know, as long as you don't use it, they do let you return them. Again, I'm not sponsored by Corin or anything like that. I've just spent an obscene amount of money there. And there is a reason for that. All right, I think we're pretty much there. Again, we don't need to go nearly as hard on this stone. This is really our finishing. We don't want to, literally, you could like crush the edge that you made. I think we're feeling pretty good. All right. Let's do another. Oh, wait, no, we got to strap. We got to strap it. We got to strap it. It's one of those processes that, like, I never really did much dropping until like semi-recently. But it makes a difference. You know, it's one of those things you can do also to upkeep your blade, where you could like strop it before use, after use, all that kind of stuff. Japanese knives are a little bit more difficult in that you can't really use a hone when you have a really, really steep angle. Like if you have a carbon steel knife sharpened at a 10-degree angle, you can't really use a hone because you're going to crush the edge, and they're really brittle. So they can really get kind of messed up really easily. So strop is a great alternative. While it does things different, kind of in the same world. I'm sure the knife community will highly disagree with that, but what are you gonna do? What you're gonna do? Okay, let's adjust this microphone so you can see. So this is actually what I'm doing. Oh no, it's actually out of frame. All right. So how are we doing? I'll tilt you down a bit. Thank you. So we have our Corin inox knife, fully sharpened. Let's check the edge real quick. Pretty good. Yeah, a little inconsistent in the back end of the tip there, but hey, it's fine. Oh. Again, this paper is actually pretty thick. I'm actually not realizing, not even getting that on camera. Sorry, guys. We'll do it like this. Oh. Paper test works best with like magazines. This is like notepad paper, which is probably like 3 or 4 times as hard as we really want it to be. But you can kind of see when you're doing the knife test, you want to kind of start from the base and work your way up to see if there's a point where it snags. Really what you're looking for is for it to like get like a snag before it really goes through. You know, there are certain points, like you might have seen it kind of get a little snag when I was going, where like depending on your ankle and your approach, you might hit it, but you can kind of tell if it's like, you know, what the paper is doing versus if there's actually an inconsistency. And a lot of times if you just go back and look, you can see it pretty easily. So yeah, we got 2 knives. Second knife is sharp. I'm feeling pretty good about that. I think that's about it. I've talked a lot about this stuff. I'm going to be doing more knife sharpening stuff in the future. I will sharpen some of my carbon steel knives, which is going to be a bit of a different thing. There's a little bit of a quicker process, a little bit more drying and stuff like that. I'll talk through, you know, different types of carbon steels and all that kind of stuff when I'm doing that. But thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm very, very much appreciative of it. Let's see, what did it say? The cutting was out of frame. The mic is in frame. I know. Do some before and after next time. Cool to see the transformation. That's not a bad idea. So this mic, which is in frame, is actually very similar to kind of how, just a little side note, when I do my like shorts for Instagram and stuff like that, pretty much when I'm like doing like, ooh, and all that kind of stuff, the microphone is pretty much right here, but just maybe like 6 inches back, in case anyone was kind of wondering how it goes. I don't generally use a lot for that stuff. I'm really only using this boom mic up here. Rubby. Anyways, thank you guys so much, and have a good one.